Good morning. So, there are a lot of people who work behind the scenes and who are working behind the scenes so that by September the 7th, Ordinary Life is going to have a new look. And people are working on that. One of the people who is helping, as a matter of fact, key responsible for the Substack that will go out, I think, this Thursday. Ben Wells is not here at the moment, but I think he intends to send another invitation out in the morning so that if you're not subscribed to that Substack, you can be. And one of the first things I'm going to do on the Substack is share our experiences in Lincoln, because we are accompanying the choir to England this week. And I'm going to take some time off teaching here. You need a break from me. Yeah, and I need a break. So we got a lineup of really great speakers who are coming, including next Sunday. Dr. Jim Bankston is coming, and later in the month of August, Representative Ann Johnson is going to be here. Other people who are going to be here. We'll publish that so that you can see it. So I just want to give you that heads up. And to say that no matter who you are or where you are on your spiritual journey, you are celebrated here. So we begin this time in silence. Our silence reflects our intention that we stay aware that we live inside the heart of sacred mystery, and that this sacred mystery seeks to find expression through how we live and express ourselves in the world. So may grace be in our heads and in our thinking. May grace be in our eyes and in our seeing. May grace be in our ears and in our hearing. May grace be in my mouth and in my speaking. May grace be in our hearts and in our understanding. May grace be in our ends and at our departing. And may the power of new life work on all that we are and all that we do. And that may we have the eyes to see and courage to walk in the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. And may all creation benefit because of what we do here today. When magic is performed, people have one of two reactions. And you're likely in one of these two groups. One group simply likes magic. They like the way it makes them feel. They don't want to know the secrets. They enjoy the illusion of magic. The other group doesn't like magic. They don't like the way it makes them feel. They don't like being fooled. They think they want to know the secret of how a magic effect is done. But I will tell you, if you are in that second group, you don't. Magic is a lot like a hot dog. The more you know, the harder it is to swallow. So I want to take a chance to demonstrate what I mean by that. And you can see there's nothing up my sleeves but my arms. And you are about to be amazed, because that silk has turned into an egg. And furthermore, the silk has gone from here to here. So you have just seen what in magic history is either 2 of the 9 or 2 of the 7 magic effects that are possible. You have seen a transformation of a silk into an egg, and you have seen the transposition of a silk from here to here. And you think you want to know how this is done. Do you remember years ago there used to be on TV a program called The Masked Magician? Did you ever see that? There was a guy in a mask and they did magic tricks and then he exposed how they were done. Magicians hated that. I mean, I kind of liked it because I learned some new stuff. We don't see him anymore. We killed him. And you're going to think, oh my gosh. So if you want to do this, there's something you need to get. You need to get a magician's egg. Now, a magician's egg is not an egg that was laid by a magician. It's an egg, the hole in the back of it. And you need 2 silk handkerchiefs. And if you're going to do this, please get silk handkerchiefs that are the same color. Just saying. You'd be amazed. 1 silk handkerchief goes in your pocket, of course. Now the other one, you can put the egg where you want to. Sometimes I put the egg on the table and then covered it with the silk so when I pick it up, the egg is concealed. Sometimes I keep it in my pocket. You take the magician's egg and you put it in your palm. In magician's language, this is called palming. I'm going to leave it exposed so you can see what I'm doing. You take the silk and you poke it into the egg. In magician's language, this is called poking. And then you can stop and tell a joke. If you don't know a joke, you can admit to murder, like I did. This is called misdirection. And then you reveal the egg, and your hand goes into your pocket and gets the silk. It's as simple as that. Okay? Now, what we learn in magic school is watch your angles. You can't do this trick if somebody is behind you. Otherwise, they'll see the hole and that's the end of the trick. So you don't want to do that. Watch your angles. When that happens to me, you ever seen Roadrunner cartoons? All I do is I just take the hole and peel it off. And then you pretend to break the egg. And you try not to make a mess. And that's how you do. You get stupendous applause. Now, the reason I showed you that is because when it comes to the kind of teaching I do in here about religious and spiritual literacy, I think there are 2 kinds of people. There are people who really, really like the information that they get. They're energized by it. They're actually excited about it. They're learning new things that set them free. And then there is another group, and this group itself is broken into 2 groups. They're saying, let's get on with it. Let's get to the stuff that really matters. And they want that. And then there's the other group that says, wait a minute, this is not what I learned in church. Are you telling me that the people I grew up with didn't tell me the truth or that I was misinformed? And then besides, I'm not sure I can give that up. And besides, if I do embrace some of what you are teaching, the people that I hang out with who don't hear this stuff are not going to agree with this position, and I'm going to feel on the outside. Now, I thought about that when I read the passage that we're up to in the Gospel according to Jesus in Stephen Mitchell's version of the narrative. And it's my intention to keep going through this when I return, because I believe that part of the mess that we are in culturally and globally is that we suffer from a severe lack of religious and spiritual intelligence. And we've got to transcend our current understanding of religion if we're going to be empowered not only to endure these times, but if we're going to, what I call, befriend the evolutionary process that we are involved in and create something that is more life-enhancing for us and for other people when we get on the other side of this. So I want to read you the passage that we are up to, and I think you'll see better what I mean. And they went up into the hills. He went up into the hills and called his disciples and appointed 12 of them to be with him and to be sent out to proclaim the kingdom of God and to heal. Simon, whom he named Peter, James the son of Zebedee, John his brother, whom he named Boanerges, which is sons of thunder, Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas and James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus and Simon the Zealot and Judas Iscariot. Now, I hope you remember where we are in the story. We meet Jesus when he is hanging out with John the Baptist. And they part company, and Jesus heads out on his own. And Jesus develops a reputation as a healer and as a storyteller. And he tells those who follow him that he has in mind a new world order that's going to revitalize Jewish identity. And he calls this the empire or the rule of God. Now, the kingdom of God is the way the phrase is translated from the Greek. The problem is Jesus didn't speak Greek. So we actually do not know what Jesus said. Now, for those of you who have red letter editions of the New Testament, this could be a problem. But there is a phrase that he used for this new world order, and there remains a debate among biblical scholars, both conservative and liberal today, as to what Jesus meant by that. Some think he meant a new political order that was coming in. Some think he meant that there would be the restoration of the Israel as a nation and as a religious group. Among conservative Christian religious people today, there are people who are sure that what Jesus meant was that those who believed in him would go to some place after they died where they would be safe, or that Jesus was going to return someday and establish his kingdom here on earth, and that if you didn't get with the program, the ending is pretty messy. Now, it's clear if you read the writings we have, especially from Paul, that the early Jesus followers expected something to happen. And it didn't. So they kept having to revise their plans. Now, something did happen in the community that was created and survived. We're not sure whether that is what Jesus had in mind or not. Because Jesus never, as far as we know, said what this new world order was or what it would be. He told a lot of stories about it, but he said what it was like, not what it was. So we read along in the narrative, going through one parable after another, and then we get to this passage which seems to be a break from the telling of parables and to be kind of a bit of like travelogue, bit of narrative. But it isn't. This too is a parable created by the early church to say something about Jesus. This parable is as much of a parable, this passage is as much of a parable as those told by Jesus as were the stories that his followers created. So there's not a switching of gears from parable, travelogue. This is a parable. So the people who first heard this passage, and they would have heard it, not read it, would have heard it as a powerful story of radical inclusivity and community, and they would also have heard it as a story about political liberation. So the parable begins by saying that Jesus went up the mountain. Now there is no way that a Jew was going to hear this story without being reminded of another Jewish leader, prophet, liberator, who also went up on a mountain, and that was Moses. So Jesus' followers, particularly Matthew's version, crafted stories that were strung together to create a narrative that saw Jesus as the new Moses. Just as Moses went up on the mountain to converse with God and get guidance to post on the walls of Texas classrooms, Jesus goes up on the mountain to deliver the Sermon on the Mount. And of course, none of these stories is to be taken literally. So important things in Jewish life and history happened on mountaintops. And the same is true with the telling of the story of Jesus. So our collective unconscious has retained these stories, and they show up in myths, Mount Olympus, all that sort of thing. When you have a dream and you have a shift in elevation, up or down, that's always significant. So in Jewish folklore, as well as other myths, mountains are symbols of revelation and of political resistance. It is not a climb to power, but it is a journey to deeper solidarity and resistance. While on the mountain, Jesus calls apostles. And again, this is symbolic. It is not literal. There is no consistent telling of the 12 apostles in the Gospels. Conservatives go through all sorts of contortions to make the differing list of the 12 fit together, but it can't be done. 12 was the number Jesus' followers created to express their hope that the 12 tribes of Israel would be reconstituted. But this listing is so much more powerful than that. Now, there's no question Jesus had apostles. Now, these are the people, both men and women, whom he deputized to represent him in spreading the word about this new world order that he had in mind. Now, some people have wanted to make Jesus so unique and special that they overlook, or they don't make much of the fact, that even in the Gospels, these apostles are given the same kind of power that Jesus had. They heal. They raise people from the dead. They do miracles. And again, these are not literal facts. But having apostles was one thing that set Jesus apart from the other Jewish mystic prophetic voices of his time. Like John the Baptist. The way Jesus scholar John Dominic Crossan puts it is that John the Baptist had a monopoly. Jesus had a franchise. When John lost his head because of what he had done, his ministry came to an end. But when Jesus was executed, his ministry continued because his apostles kept that message alive in the places where they went on the world. So one of the things this passage is saying, that Jesus is enacting a counter kingdom, challenging the existing religion and political structure. It's going to be one rooted in healing, liberation, and in nonviolence. Now I want you to notice who Jesus calls his apostles. The list reflects the patriarchy of the time. We know now that the movement included women, like any organization, religious organization or otherwise. If it hadn't been for women, it would not have lasted. So Jesus created a community of service, not of leadership. He called ordinary individuals, not religious elites. And as he would have to remind them again and again, their calling was not to positions of power, but they were to send out to the margins with a message of a new way of being. Real discipleship is relational, not institutional. To quote John Dominic Crossan again, Jesus does not call people to titles, but to tables. So Jesus goes up the mountain, not to isolate himself, but to call ordinary people into extraordinary purpose. He calls fishermen, skeptics, zealots. He's forming a resistance movement, and it's going to be rooted in presence, proclamation, love, and freedom. He called people to be with him. He called people over and over to abide with him. Not to earn, but to learn, to walk with. A quote attributed to St. Francis is, always proclaim the good news. Sometimes use words. So the way Jesus himself proclaimed his message was by embodying it. And that's what he asked his followers to do as well. They were sent out to confront whatever dehumanized people. So you will hear again and again in the gospel records about casting out demons. What casting out demons means is confronting whatever makes a person less. Violence, exploitation, racism, patriarchy, poverty, fear, whatever it is that needs to be confronted, challenged, and replaced with a more empowering way of being. Now I want you to notice that there's no effort to clean up the list. Peter is there. Peter will deny Jesus. Judas is there. He will betray Jesus. One of the tasks, sometimes it's joyful and exciting, and at other times it's terrifying, is to go up the mountain with Jesus. Now, you know I'm speaking metaphorically. I think one of the curses that monotheism has left us with is a kind of imperialism that has left us spiritually malnourished. And I'm referring to the belief that our religion contains the fullness of truth to such a degree that all other religions are deemed somehow inferior. It never ceases to amaze me that Christianity professes to proclaim a gospel of freedom and truth. But at the same time, if people don't see it our way, they are not seeing things correctly. Now, one of the things I mean by climbing the mountain with and to Jesus is that if we're going to claim to be Christian, I think we need to dig as deep as possible into that tradition, while at the same time holding it that this is not the only path. Again, I remind you of the phrase, it isn't the way because Jesus walked it. Jesus walked it because it is the way. Jesus never preached himself. He told stories. They were stories of love, liberation. He invited his followers to be salt of the earth and light of the world. So what does it mean to climb the mountain? One of the things psychologists are supposed to know about is about human growth and development. And so I have in here, over the years, exposed a lot of different theories of growth and development. I think it's very important that we know these. So we begin with an egg today. Let's go back to an egg. So I have been, through my academic training and continuous study, exposed to many models of growth and development. This is one that I got from Richard Orr years and years ago. He called it the cosmic egg. So our stories start out at the my story level. And here we develop a story that says, this is me. Actually, this story is not one we develop, it's one we're handed. Some people never get out of this level. They go through life believing that they are what they have done, or they are what has been done to them. Now, this is where liberals get stuck. Liberals are stuck at the level of private meaning and educated explanations. So right now, you and I are living in the first era of human history where people have been allowed the luxury of taking their private lives and personal identities seriously. So there's a wonderful opportunity at this level for exploration, for what the exploration of what Carl Jung meant by the self. This is the area where, when we are in it, we think we're special. One of the most painful things my first spiritual director said to me was, Bill, most of your troubles would just evaporate. If you could get it, you're not special. I killed him too. So, this is the area that spiritual practice encourages us to leave behind. So, though there is wonderful opportunity at this level, there's also diminishment and fragility if this is all we have for meaning. But there is the second dome of Cosmic Egg, and that's our story. And this is the level of tribal loyalty. And this is what has driven most of humanity up to this point. So again, we are at the first time in human history where cultures have evolved to the point where we can be part of many different tribes at the same time. And group identity is very important for a number of reasons. If a person does not have group identity, they are very far along on the line that we call autism. Although I am learning from my psychology colleagues and in journals that using the word autism and Asperger's is to be put aside because we're all on the spectrum. This level of meaning, this our story, is that's what gives us our myths, our cultural heroes, our symbols, our flags, our special foods, our ethnicity, our patriotism. The loyalties is the level of what has driven and continued to drive human history. And people have, and they do, give up their lives for this level. Much of religion is at this level because it's a belonging system rather than a search for intimacy with the sacred. Now, this level is where conservatives get stuck. Both liberals and conservatives are experiencing being developmentally arrested. That is, they have stopped growing. Now, I have heard several people, a lot smarter than I am, say that based on a variety of factors, they claim that about 80% of the adult population in the United States is arrested at late adolescent development. Now, they use a number of factors to judge this. I won't go into all of them, but I will give you two kind of popular ones. One way is that they judge the popularity of what is on primetime commercial television. It is geared for adolescent intellects. And I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but 20 minutes out of every primetime commercial hour is devoted to our national religion, consumerism. The other way that they make this evaluation is to see what is going on in national politics. Because what we are witnessing is an out-of-control cafeteria food fight, where each side is saying some version of, "He hit me first." We are witnessing an abysmal lack of honesty and the refusal to take personal responsibility for virtually anything. Now, Rohr got much of his thinking about this from Ken Wilber, who says that as we grow and develop, we always transcend and include. One of the things I dislike about the prefix post, as in postmodern or post-Christian, is that it implies discarding everything that went before it, and you can't do that. So the third dome is the story. And this is what has been true for humans for 7,000 to 10,000 years. It didn't just start with Jesus. So it is at the story level that we can see the value of the my story and the our story. The story holds everything together into one thing. So to summarize, healthy religion honors and combines all three of these. Our personal journey is the raw material we use for building blocks. So you are still hearing remnants of Southern Baptist in me. And with great gratitude, I learned a lot. Communal identity is the school and training ground from which we can launch into a more integrated understanding of ourselves and the world. And at the story level, we are freed from the tyranny of I am and the idolatry of we are. So both liberalism and conservatism are ways to avoid surrendering to the sacred and moving to the story. And when we move to the story, it will feel like dying. We die to our own constructs and certainties. So that goes back to what I was referring to earlier, that when people hear the insights of recent biblical religious scholarship, they say, wait, I can't give that up. It's part of my identity. It's what I was taught by my grandparents or whatever. Or if I give that up, I'm going to have to be part of a new group. I don't know a religion. I don't know them all. But I do not know a religion where there is not this mystery of life coming from death. Buddhism starts, life is suffering. Death is inevitable. Have a nice day. Right now, our culture, the United States, we are experiencing our own Calvary. It defies explanation. When I look at the decisions being made not to educate people, to restrict freedom of thought, to take control of people's minds and bodies, and I think about the implication that that has for our collective future, I think, why are we shooting ourselves in the foot like this? The person who lives within the totality of the cosmic egg is the mystic, the prophet, the universal man or one, the saint, the whole one. And the saving of our world will be led by those who can and live in all three realities simultaneously. As I said, there are a number of models of spiritual growth and development. One can be found in the writings of St. Teresa of Avila. She wrote this manual called The Interior Castle in 1577. And in it, she describes the spiritual journey as one makes by going through 7 interior castles, one after another. Jim Finley tells the story about when he entered the monastery where Thomas Merton would become his spiritual director. Finley was 17. He'd run away from an abusive alcoholic family system, and he'd heard about Merton and Gethsemane, so he went there, 17. And when he got there, Merton gave Finley the assignment of going every day to the barn and feeding and watching the pigs. And then coming back and talking to Merton about what he was learning. That was his spiritual practice. Okay? So one day, as a 17-year-old boy, Finley went to Merton and said, now get it, he's only 17, and he says, as only a 17-year-old could say. He's got a copy of Teresa of Avila's book in his hand. And he says, I want you to tell me the truth about something. I've been reading Teresa's Interior Castle, and I think I am in the 3rd castle. I could be in the 4th, but I want you to tell me the truth. I can take it. And Merton said, Jim, it's none of your damn business where you are. Go feed the pigs. We go up the mountain, which, by the way, is a never-ending journey. Isn't that hopeful? Isn't that exciting? It's not drudgery. Oh, my God, there's so much more. And we abide with Jesus. And if we do that, the rest will take care of itself. All we need is to embrace that all the time, no matter what, we are embraced by sacred mystery. And that sacred mystery seeks to find expression through how we live and relate. Freedom, compassion, justice. There is an old joke, bad joke, which will not stop me from telling it. And the joke is this. It is said that 1 out of every 3 people is suffering from mental illness. So if you look and the people on either side of you seem to be doing okay, so as we were climbing the mountain, and we got on top of it, again, that's a metaphor, it's of limited use, but it's okay. We noticed the people that we're hanging out with. And my God, there are all sorts and conditions of people. They include the archetypical Peter, who is the denier, and Judas, who is the betrayer. And it's not for us to judge because each of us has those archetypes in us. Right? My spiritual director once gave me the assignment of when I looked on someone and judged them for whatever reason, good or bad, I was to say, just like me. You might try it. Over the years, and I am speaking of decades now, not just a few years, the most frequently repeated thing I have heard from people who are in the recovery movement is, why can't the church be more like AA? And the answer I have come up with is that in AA meetings, people go to be who they are, and there's no judgment. In church, people go to look like who we hope to God we wish we were. There's a difference. One day a rabbi goes from his office to run an errand, and he happens to step into the temple, and he's just overcome with emotion. The memory of all that's happened there, the history of the place. One of my theology teachers said, Jews have things on their coffee tables that we keep in museums. They know history. And most temples and surrounding them are filled with that history. So the rabbi goes in the temple, and he's overcome with emotion, remembering the funerals, the wedding, the bar mitzvahs that occurred there. And he's drawn forward to the Ark of the Covenant where the scrolls are kept, and he kneels. He lifts his head up and lifts his arms and says, Lord, have mercy. I'm nobody. I am nobody. And the cantor happens to be in the temple preparing for Saturday's service. And he loves the rabbi. He respects the rabbi. And he too is caught up in this emotion. And he goes forward and kneels by the rabbi, raises his hands and says, Lord, have mercy upon me. I am nobody. I am nobody. And the janitor happens to come in, and he sees what's going on. And he joins the other two, and he lifts his arms. And he says, Lord, have mercy. Have mercy. I'm nobody. I'm nobody. And the rabbi nudges the counter and says, look who thinks he's nobody. To paraphrase Finley, it's none of our damn business where we are or what other people are up to. Our task is simply to abide, to be salt, to be light, to feed the pigs. Or, as Jesus put it, feed my sheep. Treat other people like they were me because they are. So Jesus sent that motley crew out to heal and to proclaim good news. And healing means confronting whatever dehumanizes people. In our time, in this culture, that includes violence, exploitation, racism, patriarchy, poverty, fear, dishonesty, trust. And it is slow. It is difficult work. Personal growth, as I've been saying in here the last several times, is hard. It is hard on many different levels. Doing the work of deconstruction is hard. It is hard to have a daily spiritual practice. In Buddhism, it's referred to as unbinding, and God knows we have so much we need to be unbound from. Showing up for the work of racial and economic justice is hard. So is making space for LGBTQIA plus lives and voices. That's hard. Seeking and protecting the planet as a sacred trust is hard. Listening deeply and trying to amplify the voices that the world ignores is hard. One of the things I do to stay sane in our current culture is to carefully curate what I watch on the Cyclopean Idiot box. We love PBS programming, and I'm heartbroken that in its stupidity, our government has passed a bill now to defund public education, public television. Again, shooting ourselves in the foot. The argument our Texas senator made for doing so is that taxpayers should not have to pay for such programming. We will pay in the future when we get a generation of kids who grow up without the mind-enhancing experiences they get from PBS. One of the programs that I record is Late Night with Stephen Colbert. He helped keep me sane during a pandemic. I have a deep appreciation for the comedic writing that is on Stephen Colbert. You may not know this, but it takes 200 people to produce that program. I'm in line with his political observations, but to me, he's just commenting on what is. And one of the things I'm looking forward to in going to England is I hope to go for a 24-hour period without hearing the two words Donald Trump. At any rate, a few nights ago, Stephen Colbert had as one of his guests Dr. Francis Collins. Collins served as the director of the National Institutes of Health from 2009 to 2021. His reasons for resigning, which I'm not going to go into, are terrifying. But that show originally aired on July the 16th, and I highly, all caps, recommend that you go stream it and watch it. July the 16th. As you likely know, CBS is terminating Colbert because Trump cannot stand to be made fun of. It is his kryptonite. It is said, now whether this is true or not, I don't know, but it is said that in the Greek Forum one day, they were making fun of Socrates, and he stood up so people could see who they were making fun of. That's maturity, self-responsibility, and wisdom. So Dr. Collins said the stated reason for the cuts in the medical research budget is to address the national deficit, which the recent big, beautiful bill promises to do. But Collins said that there were other deficits we need to address that are more important than the monetary one. Now, I'm going to use his points, but these are my words. He said we have a truth deficit. We have reached the point in American culture that Anna Hart predicted. We no longer know who to believe or what. People at the highest levels of our government look us straight in the face and lie to us. And we know it. And there is no good mother to wash out their mouths. And even on so-called non-biased news, you don't know who to believe because you don't know if their sources are telling them the truth. That's where we've gotten to. And further, as a culture, we've developed a rather blasé attitude about it. Politicians lie. Go, so what? What are you going to do? Which leads to the trust deficit. Because we don't know who's telling the truth or can't be sure that they are, we don't trust each other. And that's detrimental for our future. Civic cohesion collapses when individuals can't rely on basic trust in one another. So the first developmental theory that I learned in clinical training was that of Erik Erikson, who described the 8 ages of development, and the first one is basic trust. And if you don't have that, you can't build anything else on top of it. And then he mentioned the civility deficit. What we hear our leaders say has become increasingly hostile and uncivil, and it's given permission to other people to re-say those things. So how can we have an essential national dialogue if name-calling is what we have been reduced to? And then the deficit he mentioned that hit me the hardest is what he called the compassion deficit. Now here I am going to quote him. Now, get in mind, this is one of the most respected physicians in our nation's history. Okay? Quote, "What happened to us? How can it become normalized not to be concerned about our fellow human beings? Predictions are that since the plug was pulled on USAID, 90,000 children have died unnecessarily. And yet, where's the outrage?" End of quote. You know, we've been in deep grief here because of the drownings in the hill country, and deservedly so, rightly so. I don't know if you saw the news this morning, but all but 3 of the now unaccounted people have been accounted for. Most alive, all of them. They didn't know they were missing, I guess, or something. That was tragic. That was tragic. The deaths in the hill country are tragic. No doubt about that. 500 metric tons of emergency aid food meant to feed malnourished children, especially in the Middle East, were recently destroyed because the insanity of Doge allowed them to sit undistributed until they were no longer fit for consumption. What has happened to us that at any level that is okay? Or that we have just come to be blasé and shrug it off? I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad. That serves no purpose. But we are called to go up the mountain. We're called to wake up and to become more conscious so that we can see each other and see others out there, and then widen that circle so that we can do what Jesus said when we go down from the mountain and into the world, to be salt and light, to bring healing and good news. We have to ascend the mountain. We have to abide with Jesus. We have to see and care for each other. We have to see and care for the earth. Now, I thought of what and how I would end this teaching today. I wanted something bright and beautiful and hopeful. And I finally realized what it was. It's sitting in the chair you're occupying. Bright, brave, beautiful, ordinary mystics are going to change the world. That's my faith. See you in September. No matter where you go, no matter what happens, remember this: you carry precious cargoes, so watch your step. See you later. Right there.